Yeah, like Jesse said, I'm going to be talking about ProBio, but not just ProBio, but also the prebiotic and how those two. I mean, you have to be using these two products together. I'll just say right off the bat, our ProBio outsells the prebiotic 4-1. That's a pretty disheartening statistic for me because, as I hope to illustrate in this presentation, you need to be taking these two products together to be maximizing the benefit. Like Jesse alluded to, the product of the month this month is ProBio. So you're going to be seeing a lot of assets coming out around ProBio to help you share, educate people about the importance of overall microbiome health and especially gut health. So today I'm going to talk about your microbiome, why it's so important. But towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to shift just a little bit and speak to how important your overall microbiome and gut health is, and the ingredients in the prebiotic and probiotic are so important to support your overall immune health. So if you've ever seen me present, I like to kind of start from the beginning, and I love definitions. So what is actually your microbiome? And this is exactly what we're talking about supporting with prebiotic and probio. So your microbiome is defined as this collection of microorganisms that live on and in us. And you might think that's incredibly disgusting, but it's not. It's essential for our health and life. In fact, if we were sterile, we would not be alive very long. And this might be where maybe the medical community had steered us wrong in the past. We thought if you were sick, antibiotics. If you were dirty, take an antibiotic, whatever it is. Like, the medical community was literally trying to keep us sterile for so long. And that was probably, now in hindsight, the wrong approach, because these microorganisms that live on us are actually providing us a massive benefit. Usually we're talking about bacteria when we're talking about the microbiome, but we're actually made up of a number of different organisms. So those can include things like archaea. These are really primitive bacteria. Protozoa, you can almost think of these as little single-celled animals that are kind of swimming around in us. Even fungi and viruses, right? I mean, we think about viruses especially as being so bad, but there are actually some beneficial viruses that our bodies need. And like I mentioned, usually when we're talking about the microbiome, we're talking about bacteria. But stop thinking about these as being nasty little critters that we want to get rid of. This is actually a mutualistic relationship. Okay, so if you're not familiar with what a mutualistic relationship is, it's where two organisms live in really tight synergy and they provide a benefit to each other. So let's run through a couple of examples that you might be familiar with in nature. I mean, think about a honeybee and a flower. If we lost all of our pollinators off the face of this earth, you would never eat another fruit in your life. So think about that. And if you think about this mutualistic benefit, the flower puts a ton of energy into making pollen and nectar and other bribes, if you will, to get the honeybee to come in there. These little automated paintbrushes that are flying around and pollinating all these different flowers. They need each other to survive. Think about Nemo and the anemone, right? One's providing shelter and the other one provides some cleaning benefit. What about ants living in the forest? We don't see many of these in North America, but these are leafcutter ants, and they are essential to the nutrient cycling in especially rainforest areas. So as leaves drop or limbs break off, these ant cutters go in and they actually farm these leaves to eat a fungus that they grow. And then they kick the decomposed leaves out the back, and you get this massive nutrient cycling that goes on. Think about coral and algae. So actually coral, if you take the algae away, are pure white, bright white. The thing that gives coral its color is there's an algae that's living inside of it. So again, you have an organism that's providing a home, right, for the algae, and then the algae is actually making food for both itself and for the coral. So you can see these tight relationships that live throughout nature. And it turns out all these microorganisms that are living on and in us are doing the same thing. We're providing a home and food, and in turn, what we're going to talk about in just a minute is all the health benefits that they are giving back to us. So it's estimated that our microbiome composes about as many cells as we are human cells. So think about that. You're as much microorganisms as you are yourselves. So just in mass number, these things must be doing something incredibly important for us. So where does the microbiome live on and in our bodies? Well, these microorganisms are literally living inside of every nook and cranny in the human body. And the chart on the right is so interesting because those little pie charts indicate the different species of microorganisms that are living in these different parts on our body. So the details aren't so important, but can you see how the colors are different? So each little section where we have these different microbiomes is composed of completely different organisms, each doing a unique function. So what are some of the health effects that we can experience as a result of a healthy microbiome? So we have things like lipid metabolism. They can provide cardiovascular health benefits. We're going to talk about immune health a little bit later. Our microbiome can even manufacture a number of nutrients for us. So things like vitamin K, a number of B vitamins, and some others. So incredibly important for nutritional status. They're great for oral health as well. So we want to support a healthy microbiome inside of our mouths. I'm going to talk about brain health just a little bit later. They help us metabolize a number of nutrients, especially things like the different fibers that we consume. They also help us metabolize a number of different compounds that we can put into our body. So again, kind of coming back to that nutrient metabolism angle. And then obviously, very important for overall gut health. Okay. So if we're talking about gut health, where is the microbiome located inside of our gut? So on that schematic on the right, you see we kind of start with the stomach, and then there at the very bottom, we kind of get to the business end of our digestive tract. But the further we go down our digestive tract or our gut or our GI tract, the more microbiome we have. And this is interesting if you think about it, because if this microbiome was located up closer to the stomach, we would actually be competing for especially food resources. But the microbiome has become so smart that it lives at the very tail end, literally, of our digestive tract. And it's just picking up the scraps that we're unable to digest. So the microbiome, especially when it comes to that nutrient metabolism component, is important to digest the foods that we are given the first swing at to digest, and then is digesting those foods that we cannot. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard the concept that our gut is the second brain. Sounds a little bit crazy, right? Our gut is like our second brain. And I got to be candid, when I first heard this, I thought it was absolutely bonkers. But now there's some very strong research that shows the very intimate relationship that our gut has with our brain and that our brain has with our gut. So think about when you start feeling thirsty, or you start feeling hungry, or when you feel incredibly full, like you ate too much, right? You're thinking about that in your brain, but all of that signaling is coming directly from the gut. And it turns out that these microbes that are living in your gut can produce a number of different signals and signaling molecules that can travel throughout the body, including to your brain. And so this whole concept of our gut being the second brain is also known as the gut-brain axis. So let's talk about that just a little bit more. So there on the bottom of the slide, we have this gut microbiome, okay? And then up top, we have our brain. And right, number of things affect our brains, our lifestyle, our environment, and that's being communicated directly to our gut. But then we also have this direct communication that's going on between our brain, and that's in the form of nerves. So we literally have direct wires that are going from your gut to your nerve. So there's little stretch sensors, for example, inside of our stomach. So we can sense when our stomach is full. It signals to the brain, hey, you've had enough to eat. Why don't you push away from the table? There are other forms of communications. These become a little bit more vague, if you will, or a little bit more theoretical, but the science now is incredibly sound. So what is happening as the microbiome is eating that food that we're unable to digest? it starts to make a number of incredibly important compounds as a result of their metabolism. So these can be things like neurotransmitters that would obviously have direct effects on our nervous systems. But then what's so intriguing are all of these cell signaling molecules that are created by the gut microbiome. So those can act directly on the cells of the gut, but they can also make it into circulation and get throughout our bodies and including into the brain. So can you see all the different ways that our gut and our brain are interacting? It's just absolutely fascinating. And so this is an interesting study that lends this scientific credibility to this whole concept. This study was done in mice. You could never do a study like this in humans, because what they did was completely sterilize the mouse on the right. Okay, so it has no microbiome living on it or in it. And then in the images on the left column, going down this slide, these mice were given back what's thought to be a healthy microbiome for a mouse. And then they looked at the brain activity that was going on. So it's very clear that when you have a healthy microbiome, you can see all of that activity that becomes present in this case, in these mice brains, right? It's just absolutely fascinating. So what can we do to support our microbiome? So I think before we get too deep into the nitty gritty, let's kind of work through a few definitions. And the good news is you only need to know 3, and they're not even full definitions. All you really need to know are 3 different prefixes, okay? So that's prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic. So let's just quickly talk about these. So first, let's start with prebiotic. And I should also say, if these still confuse you, don't feel bad. They still confuse me today. And every time I say pre or probiotic, I kind of have to go through them in my brain. Prebiotic, probiotic, okay, probiotic. So you'll get more comfortable with these the more you use them, but I know it's a little bit confusing. So let's talk about these a little bit more in depth. Prebiotic, the simplest way I like to think about prebiotics is it is simply the food that is meant to feed the microbiome. Okay, that's simple. Prebiotic is the food for your microbiome. So examples of these include usually fibers, right? Again, those things that we cannot digest. So those can be plant fibers, fruit fibers, even a different kind of even tougher fiber that lives in some plants, things like cellulose. And all of these are actually carbohydrates, but just because of the bonding structure that's going on between these different sugars and these complex carbohydrates, our bodies just can't break those bonds down. And so they tend to just pass right through us. So some of these other non-digestible complex carbohydrates, or polysaccharides as they're technically known, include things like inulins, pectins, gums. We get a number of questions coming in about, hey, what is this or that gum that might be in the product? Well, gum maybe sounds scary, but a gum is nothing more than a type of fiber. Then you have some fibers that come especially from seeds called lignans, and even a number of phytonutrients, right? These kind of secondary and tertiary compounds that live in plants can actually act as prebiotics. So what is a probiotic? Again, simply put, a probiotic is the actual microorganism, right? So this living, breathing thing. Now, in human health, we tend to talk about these as bacteria, and that's probably just because they're the most studied to date. But we're going to be seeing a lot of research that's centered around those other microorganisms that I was talking about earlier, right? Things like viruses and fungi, etc. And so these living microorganisms have this beneficial effect on our overall health. And here, I'm not going to run through all of these complicated names, but just know that there are probably thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of different species of these probiotics that are living inside us. And then a postbiotic. This is a relatively new concept. A postbiotic is where you're not leveraging the food that the probiotics eat. You're not giving the actual organism, the probiotic. you're actually using components from these healthy microorganisms to still elicit a health benefit. So why does that become important? Well, if you think about where, especially in our guts, these microorganisms are living, it actually becomes incredibly difficult to take them out, culture and grow them up, isolate them back, and then even harder to make them kind of shelf stable so that when we ingest them again, that they will deliver those health benefits. So what you can do is use certain components of these microorganisms or bacteria, things like their cellular structures or metabolites, and actually give them back so that we're still getting most, if not all, of those health benefits from these microorganisms. So some examples of postbiotics could be heat inactivated bacteria. So you can isolate the bacteria, grow them up, and then just heat inactivate them so they're no longer viable. You can grind these bacteria up and give them back as crude extracts. But then you can start to isolate different components of these microorganisms or bacteria, things like the cell walls. You can have lipid and water soluble extracts, or you can even isolate back specific metabolites that have been shown to give the health benefits. So that's just a little bit more into what these microbiome are, but now let's dive a little bit deeper into what our products are doing to help support your microbiome health, and especially on this immune front. So let's start with the prebiotic. So if you remember, what is prebiotic? It's the food that feeds the probiotic. So remember when I was talking, being so disheartened that we don't see a 1-to-1 ratio in sales of prebiotic and probiotic. I want you to think about how these two products are really interacting to provide overall gut health, okay? So some of the benefits that we can claim from our prebiotic, they support a healthy, balanced gut microbiome, and that's because you're providing the food that's specific for those probiotics. It promotes a healthy gut environment by feeding these probiotics, and it also helps promote a healthy and balanced relationship of bacteria to allow them to thrive, right? Any organism or pet that we might have around, we have to feed for them and care for them so they can also live their optimal life. If we look at the ingredient deck from the prebiotic, you can see it delivers an amazing amount of these prebiotic and other fibers that can help feed these probiotics. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about probio. So depending on the market that you're in, we have two different technologies that slow down the release of the probiotics from the capsule. Okay, why is that important? Well, think back to that schematic that I showed where most of that microbiome is living inside of our gut, right? It's at the very, very end of our digestive system, right? And then think about how harsh the environment is to get there. So first we have to get through the stomach, an incredibly acidic environment. Then we get into the small intestine, again, a really harsh environment. The pH changes almost completely upside down. And then we get into a more regular type of pH further down inside of our bodies. You also have all of these digestive enzymes and juices that are being released. So we want to keep those probiotics kind of locked up in this safe spot inside of the capsule to let those probiotics get where they actually need. So why is that important? Well, if you look at how quickly a regular veggie capsule, for example, would disintegrate, that happens right around 7 minutes. So that would happen when it's inside of the stomach. So depending on that specific technology that we're utilizing for these probiotics, that can take anywhere from 1 to as long as 10 hours. So you kind of get this time release effect that's going on so that we can get those probiotics further down the digestive tract and get them to where they need to be. It's pretty cool technology. So you can see we also have not just an incredibly efficacious dose of how many of these, we affectionately refer to them as bugs, but a good efficacious dose of the bacteria that we're delivering. So we're guaranteeing 6 billion CFUs. CFU stands for colony forming units. It's just kind of a wonky scientific way to quantify the time of manufacture, how many of these living, viable organisms are in the product. So not only do we have a huge efficacious dose of these probiotics, we also give a nice diversity of bacteria that we're delivering. So a lot of the competition out there is only delivering one, maybe two different species, but we have 6 at very efficacious dosages. And so because of those probiotics that we have in there, I talked about the 6 billion CFUs, right? But they're providing these bacteria that have been shown to have health benefits to ourselves. It can help maintain the gut integrity, but these probiotics also have been shown to support your immune system. So I don't know if you have ever heard this, but somewhere between 70 to 80% of our immune cells actually live inside of our gut. So we have this direct interaction between the microbiome of our gut and our immune cells. Okay, so it's incredibly important to support your microbiome for immune health. But LifeVantage has gone one step further and included a very interesting ingredient into the ProBio to further help you support your immune health. And so the branded ingredient is known as Wellmune, but it is nothing more than just these things called beta glucans that come from baker's yeast. So if you're used to baking bread, too many B's in all of this, but if you're used to baking bread, right, the yeast that you put in there is baker's yeast, helps it rise and grow. So what we're doing is isolating back these healthy components from yeast known as beta glucans, okay? All that you really need to know about these yeast beta glucans is that they are clinically proven to naturally support your immune response and protect against physical and other lifestyle stresses, all right? You don't have to worry about memorizing this or writing it down. These benefits come directly from the website. And that kind of maybe brings me to another point. But anytime you want to look at the benefits that any of our products are yielding, whether it's ProBio, prebiotic, or any of the products in the product portfolio, just go to the product display pages for any of the products, and we list all of the benefits that you can legally and compliantly talk about. So not only does yeast, goodness gracious, I'm tongue-tied. Not only does baker's yeast beta glucans support your immune health, but look at this other great claim that we can make. It supports year-round energy and health. It boosts your immune system without overstimulating it, ensuring that you don't add unnecessary stress to your system. So if you know anybody that might be looking to support their immune health, these 2 products can be an amazing 1-2 punch. But that's all you need to know about yeast beta glucans. But in an effort to keep my job, I'm going to dive just a little bit deeper into the science, because it is a really cool scientific story that's coming from these beta glucans. So what are beta glucans? Well, in life, cells basically have no structure. So if you're a single-celled organism, you know, no big deal, right? You can just kind of lay around and be a blob. But as we start to get into more complex and multicellular organisms, we need to provide structure to these cells so that they can take on that larger 3-dimensional structure. So if you think about ourselves, the way that we get our structure is from our bones, our muscle, and other connective tissues. If you think about plants, the way that they get their structure are through these different fibers, cellulose, for example. So you need something to give structure. And the thing that gives structure to fungi, yeast, mushrooms are things known as beta glucans. They are nothing more than a different type of fiber. They're a complex carbohydrate, and our bodies can utilize these beta glucans for immune health support. Now, what's even more interesting is these beta glucans aren't metabolized by like our gut epithelial cells. They're actually metabolized by a specific population of immune cells inside of our bodies. So what happens is when we ingest these beta glucans, the specific population of immune cells takes in these fibers, okay? Through their metabolism, they chop up these beta glucans into small little pieces, and then these immune cells excrete them. They then go on into circulation and start to attach to the outside of other immune cells. So did you also know that there's a nutrigenomic component to these probiotic products? It's absolutely unbelievable. So when these metabolized beta glucans attach to the outside of these other immune cells, it's activating receptors, cell signaling pathways, and eliciting responses inside of these other immune cells. This phenomenon is known as priming. So it turns out for this most abundant population of immune cells inside of our body, they prefer to have these beta glucan particles attached to the outside of them so that they can go on and more effectively do their job. So this notion of priming is really this first contact of a passive immune cell. And then through this chemical signaling called priming, it's literally taking these passive cells and making them active and more efficient in their activity. It's absolutely unbelievable. A simple way that I like to think about it is like there's two locks on the outside of these immune cells. Okay, so think about if you have to unlock two locks to get into a gate, it's going to take you some time to unlock both of those locks so that you can open the gate. The priming mechanism effectively removes one of those locks from that gate so that all you have to do is unlock the last lock and you can more quickly get into that. So this notion of priming is really removing this first barrier that these immune cells have to cross so that they can become to their heightened state and more effectively go about their daily job. So that's that whole notion of priming. And here's just a quick little video. When you ingest these beta glucans, they get to a specific spot in our digestive system, get absorbed by this specific population of immune cells. Those metabolites attach to the outside of those other immune cells. And then when they actually go about doing their job, they can do it much more efficiently because one of those locks has already been removed. Okay. So I know that's a pretty deep dive into the hard science that's behind those products. Like I said, I think it's a pretty cool scientific story, but just remember, come back to the benefits that probio and the prebiotic combination can do to support your overall immune health. Okay. So I hope that helps you understand and appreciate how we can harness the power of our microbiome, obviously for overall gut health, all those other health benefits that we can experience, but also especially for immune health. So as we're coming into the winter months here in North America, I really hope that you'll consider utilizing together both the prebiotic and probiotic products from LifeVantage. So with that, Jesse, I'll hand it back over to you. Appreciate everybody jumping on this morning. Always a pleasure.
Well, Dr. Dixon, thank you so much, right? Just fascinating stuff. I have a number of questions, but I'm going to let Tara go first because I know she's got a soccer match that she needs to get to. So she's going to present, and I think what we're going to do, I'm going to invite Tara. She's going to present. I think Tara and I might jump on a live later this week to share some additional things. But Tara, you go. Then Brian, I want to circle back and ask just a couple of questions that I have and that we're circling through the feed, and then we'll get back to Kim. Tara.
Absolutely. Hey guys, and I know there's a lot of questions in the chat, Brian, so thank you. My head is spinning right now. I was there when we launched the probiotics, so I remember a lot of that stuff, but man, a lot of that stuff is news to me, and I did a lot of screen sharing, and I'm going to go back in the Facebook group and take more notes when I have a few more minutes. So guys, I just wanted a quick message and talk to you from a marketing standpoint, because we are marketers. It is our job to learn the products, to know the products, to understand the science. Even if you don't, I'm never going to talk about beta glucans or whatever the heck you just talked about and yeast cells, and I'm never going to talk about that stuff. But isn't it amazing the confidence and the belief and the posture you have knowing the science to go in to know that you're going to be servicing your customers better? So I want you to understand the magnitude of the market size. I did some research yesterday. 74% of Americans have some kind of digestive issue, whether it's bloating, gas, discomfort. 74%. That is 7 out of 10 of your friends. And probably people don't talk about it because it's kind of a weird thing to talk about, although it is getting a little bit more mainstream. The US digestive health market is $5.1 billion. 36% of those consumers 18 and above report that they use probiotics. That's almost 20% of your customers, your family, your friends, your prospects, your network. 21% of consumers 18 and above reported being interested in probiotics. So that goes up to another 20%. That's 40%. This is a huge market share. And probiotics is not the entire digestive health. There's kombucha. When people say, is a probiotic expensive? I'm like, people are spending $3 a day on kombucha, which is $90 a month, guys. And it tastes like bleh to me. No offense if you're a kombucha gal out there. I'm not. I will take my amazing tasted prebiotics on my desk because I take it every day, and I'll take my probiotics and I'll grow my gut. But know the things like it's 1,500% more absorbable than the average probiotic on the market. So if your friend says, well, mine's a little bit less expensive, say yes, and it's only delivering 4% versus 60% on average. Do you want a product that delivers a little, or do you want to actually get results from your product? You get what you pay for. You really do. All of our products here at LifeVantage are very, very fairly priced. I've done a lot of research. I used to use a prebiotic that I bought from Whole Foods that was the same price, right? So there's people in your team, your customers, your friends, your family, your network, your prospects are already interested or investing in gut health. They're already spending money, but maybe they're not getting the results. I love the fact that you said that, Brian, Dr. Dixon, because the prebiotic and probiotic, I understand why, so I use them together. And by the way, guys, I am urging them to make that a SKU. Anybody else agree with that? To make it a prebiotic, probiotic package? I know, right? Isn't that amazing? So this, when you're going to get to Kim in a minute, she's going to share some new resources and tools. Learn it. So you guys that are savvy on social media, things like safely enhances your immune system is a compliance statement. As a marketer, that makes me excited, considering that I think today, even more than ever in history, at least in my awareness, people are concerned about their immune system. And I want to say, let's say you have 100 customers on average ordering $100 a month. Maybe they're going to try Synergizer. Do you realize just by adding the probiotic and prebiotic to that, because if they're already spending gut health, kombucha, all these things outside of it, and they're now buying from you, you could increase your entire sales by 60%. Imagine what your paycheck will look like 60% bigger, because it's 30 PV for both the probiotic and the prebiotic. So I want you to think like a marketer. And I know that sometimes, because I have a psychology degree, that one of the biggest problems in network marketing is people get afraid of the price tag. And I'm going to share a quick story with you guys. Might know it was usually on my desk. There's a book called Go for No. This is the one for network marketing, but Go for No, Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton. They're actually a married couple. And Richard used to work at a high-end clothing store. Andrea's a good friend of mine. I was actually in that last book, and she told us a story the other day on a team con. It's so good. And so he was working at a high-end men's clothing store, and a man came in and said, I need some new suits. So Richard showed him some new suits and some two ties, and the man said, yes, yes. And everything he put in front of him, he said, yes. And then Richard said, okay, well, let's get you rung up, because it was like an $1,100 sale. So the guy leaves and he's excited. He made a big sale, and the owner of the store came out and he said, look, I just made a big sale. And the owner said, but what did he say no to? He goes, what do you mean? He goes, everything you put in front of him, he said yes to. You stopped when you got uncomfortable. You guys, I invest probably $700 a month on me and my family, on all of our products, our prebiotics, our Axio, our skincare. People are already investing it. You need to find people who care about their gut health, who care about their health. Those are the people that we're looking for, not the one that's sitting there at McDonald's drinking a Diet Coke and slamming shots of tequila. That's not our guy, although they might need gut health after that. But what I'm saying is, don't get uncomfortable. It's not your job to determine whether someone or not can afford it. Maybe that guy's house just burned down and he needed 20 suits and he was going to spend $20,000. The point is, and here's a trick. You guys want to know a trick? Because I know if I look at my credit card statement, I'm always looking at anything that's 3 digits. If it's under 3 digits, I don't even look at it. I'm like, oh, it's less than $100, right? That's me. But maybe set it up on a different auto ship. Maybe have their Tri-Synergizer go out one auto ship, their prebiotic and probiotic go on another auto ship, you know, their Axio go to another auto ship. So it doesn't seem like they're spending all this money, because I promise you guys, I've done this for 13 years. There's a lot of people looking for solutions in their health. People spend $5 a day on organic blueberries to try to get antioxidants, which we all know is not even 1/40th of one molecule of superoxide dismutase. So people are already investing in it. It is your job to talk about your store, to talk about you've got skincare, you've got gut care, you got health care or hair care, you've got healthy brain food energy drinks, which I love. We've got a Tri-Synergizer, we've got cellular health, we've got healthy longevity. So just make sure when you open your store that you're not so pigeonholed into Nerf 2 that you forget the magnitude of what probiotics and prebiotics can do for people. Because again, 74% of Americans are having gut issues, and they don't even know that, you know, their immune system is in their gut, like Dr. Brian said. I've known that for a while now. So the Wellmune in itself is one of the best things to put in your body every day. And again, we can't say the C word, but people are concerned with their immune systems. So why not fix all of the problems? Why not help them have cellular health, mitochondrial health, sirtuin health, gut health, healthy brain, healthy hair, healthy non-toxic skin, you know, and all that. So open your store every day, guys. And I promise you, if you just start diving into your current customers and your current distributors, you'll find a whole heck of a lot of people that probably didn't even know we had gut health. So I hope that helps. I love you guys. And again, Jesse, if you want to dive in more, I'm happy to. And thank you guys so much. And Kim, I can't wait to hear you. I'm going to log in from the car.
Tara, your passion is infectious. I love it. Thank you so, so much. So good luck at the soccer match. Get in the car, drive safe, wear your seatbelt, and we'll see you on live. Kim, you're up. But before you start, I have a couple of questions for Dr. Dixon. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Ryan, I hope you're still there. Let me ask just a couple of things. Okay, so there was a comment, there was a question from Alexandra. She asked, where do we find this recording? When Kim is done, I'm gonna walk through and show everybody where to find historical archives of every Success Mastery training and how to access that. So hold tight for that. A couple of the questions, and this is one that came through quite often, and I don't know that we have, this may be putting you on the spot, Ryan, but is there an ideal timing to take the two products, right? Pre and pro?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is no, right? There is no necessarily optimal way to take it, but I just encourage people to get into a morning routine, right? It's okay to take, you know, everything all at once in the morning with a meal. But if that's overwhelming, what I would encourage people to do is to come up with some cue that's going to remind them when to take products. So whether, I mean, I have a cue with a cup of coffee. There's a couple products that I take then. I like to take my products at lunch. So that's my second cue. And then I like to take a couple of products right before I go to bed. So those are my 3 cues for the day. So I know when I get a cup of coffee in the morning, bang, I take this product. At lunch, I take these products. And right before I go to bed, I take the other products. But to come specifically to pro and prebiotic, you know, it was been debated for a long time. Do you need to take probiotics on an empty stomach? Do you take them on a full stomach? Should you take them with prebiotics or probiotics? And the short answer to a whole bunch of research that's been out there is it doesn't matter. Okay, so for example, the reason it doesn't matter to take probiotics on an empty stomach, the transit time has increased, so you can get those probiotics to your digestive tract a little bit more quickly. But when you take them with food, that transit time slows down, so they potentially could be exposed to a harsher environment longer, but they also have some food to feed along the way. right? So they're kind of eating and grazing as they go. So it's a complete wash. You can take both products together. That's maybe what I would recommend. But at the end of the day, don't overthink it. Get the products in your body because they don't do anything sitting in the bottles on your shelf.